Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Ifeni. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning, Ruben.
Morning.
Good morning, Rufai.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, Victoria.
Victoria, MQ, Abiola.
MQ Abiola, yes.
Good morning, Mr. Evedi.
Yes. Let's start with these day newspapers for today's review. Lead story: protesters Adamant reject SWAT, insist on holistic police reform. Demonstrations ground more cities as thugs attack demonstrators in Abuja, Lagos. Adeboye endorses #EndSARS marches. IBAN condemns brutalization of reporters. Other newspapers are reporting from the streets also. Now, the Vanguard newspaper, new twist as #EndSARS protesters reject SWAT. Armed thugs attack protesters in Abuja, Lagos. Sanwo-Olu appeals, says government currently addressing demands. EndSARS protests, reflection of leadership failure. Okowa, that's my governor, the governor of Delta State, Ifeanyi Okowa. Motorists, commuters stranded lament as protests trigger traffic gridlock. Now, the Tribune newspaper, the lead story: no SARS personnel will be part of SWAT, says the police authorities. Operations to be strictly intelligence-driven. Won't embark on routine patrols, barred from indiscriminate, unlawful search of phones, laptops, other smart devices. Structure SWAT to be acceptable to Nigerians. Labour tells the Inspector General of Police. Wants only officers with 10 years experience seconded to unit. There's prescription coming from the labor organizations. Now, the Punch newspaper, outrage as thugs attack protesters in Lagos, Abuja. EndSARS hits Kano. Hoodlums vandalize vehicles, injure protesters. Lagos attackers arrested. Buhari regime divisive, says Afenifere. Attacks on protesters sad. Nigerian Bar Association laments. Criminally minded Nigerian-sponsored thugs. Yaga, federal government to blame, says senior advocate of Nigeria. Now, the Guardian newspaper, new twist in anti-SARS protests. Thugs, robbers attack protesters in Abuja, Lagos. The Guardian of Nigeria. Now, the Daily Trust newspaper, some setback for police reform. Police reform suffers setback as appeal court voids act. We can't reform police by legislation. Lawyers. No ex-SARS operative will be part of SWAT. Inspector General of Police. Pro-anti-SARS protests continue. Now, the Daily Sun newspaper. EndSARS protests turn bloody in Lagos, Abuja. Car runs into crowd in Lagos, kills 2. Vehicles smashed as mass action spreads. Agitators float political party. Northern Coalition begins indefinite protest over insecurity. The Daily Independent newspaper, yes, no former SARS operative will be part of SWAT, says police. But there's another story, okay, beneath the headline, beneath the photographs. We can see the photograph of these thugs who attack protesters, wielding sticks, machetes, and you can see some of the vandalization that took place, carried out by these thugs who were obviously hired, because our correspondent, Ferdinand, spoke with some of those who were around the vicinity, and they even claimed that they saw somebody sharing money to these thugs before they started running towards the protesters. Now, the New Telegraph, pro-anti-SARS protesters clash. Now, if we just go straight to the foreign newspaper, yes, we start with the Guardian of UK. Now, ministers and local leaders clash over threat of further restrictions. Of course, not many are pleased with the new restrictions in Liverpool, Merseyside, and other northern cities in the UK. And they are saying that deaths from coronavirus will continue to rise for at least 3 weeks. And the NHS risk being overwhelmed unless the strictest curbs are imposed on another 4 million people. So, whether to extend or not the current Tier 3 restrictions to Greater Manchester and Lancashire, these are being considered, but not everybody is happy about that. If we look at the Daily Telegraph of UK, where Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, has warned against rushing to another lockdown, and he made clear his opposition to another lockdown because of what he termed a national economic emergency in the UK right now. But right now that is being considered. The ministers are bracing up for another announcement, which may be done a week from today, for a 2-week national lockdown to bring down the pandemic that is still spreading very fast in the UK. As at October 15, the UK cases, 654,699 cases, deaths put at 43,155 in the UK. Now, the Daily Mail, this is heart-rending, the Daily Mail newspaper, yes. The proof lockdown tears the heart out of Britain as millions more face curbs. Shock figures reveal strict rules cause surge in cardiac and stroke deaths. Yes, hundreds of under 65s have been killed by strokes and heart attacks because of the lockdown, according to a report which has just been released, published there by the Daily Mail. Sounds alarmist, but lockdown is necessary for the UK to bring down the fast rising cases of coronavirus. If we just look at what is happening in the USA, where the Wall Street Journal is reporting, yes, Barrett closes out testimony on track for Senate approval. Yes, some may not like it, including Tundu. She is likely to be cleared today. They put unnecessary pressure on these nominees. Perhaps the U.S. Senate need to borrow a leaf from the Nigerian Senate. A couple of days ago, 8 Supreme Court judges were approved without a whimper. Yes, it is not fair to put pressure on nominees to disclose how they will react if a case is brought before them at the Supreme Court at their hearing, and this is being made public. And Judge Amy Coney Barrett made that clear. It will be improper to disclose my views on matters I will be called up to decide. And he went further. If I were to just say how I thought I will resolve a case, it will be short-circuiting that whole process through which I should go and have an open mind. Tundu, she's talking to people like you who don't believe that she can rise above board.
No, I really don't. We're going to have to agree to disagree on the matter of Amy Coney Barrett. I don't trust her as far as I could throw her. but you know that. But unfortunately, that really sad story that you highlighted from the Daily Mail about the under-65s who have passed on, when we talk about COVID casualties, we think in terms of people who contracted the illness and died from it. But there's some people who have actually died from COVID-19 and they didn't actually catch it. People like this and so many others. I know one personally who couldn't get to hospital because of the lockdowns and what have you, and passed on. It's really sad, the collateral damage that this pandemic has caused.
Well, on Amy comment, quickly, if any, I think maybe we expect too much. Senate hearings in the U.S. for Supreme Court judges tend to end up more or less as a show. And what we have seen here is a process that didn't offer much, either on the side of those asking the questions or the candidate also responding to those questions. There are many commentators who think that the whole process was a sham. Did anybody really, really expect that ACB will give very honest answers? But the larger thing for me are the questions that have been raised about the constitutionality of it, the morality of it, the propriety of trying to get a Supreme Court justice onto the bench just within 3 weeks to the election. But it will be interesting, since you say it may be approved today, to see how the Republicans and the Democrats vote. On this particular nomination, you are likely to have a situation whereby all the Republicans will vote one way and all the Democrats will vote one way along partisan lines. And of course, since the Republicans have the majority in the Senate, then it looks like a fait accompli. The questions will always be asked about the propriety of the entire process itself. And should there be an issue over the presidential election, the question will come up again about whether she should recuse herself from the proceedings or not. But however, she took a professional line, saying that, well, as a judge, she's not supposed to express any partisan opinion. And you see that in the past, those judges who spoke, those nominees who spoke a little bit too honestly, ran into troubled waters.
I can imagine. All right, my point on this is this. The Democrats just know they have lost this already. It's going to pass. The Republicans have pushed it so much. They've even used online deposition, and questioning for the session and things like that. It's going to pass. But if the Democrats get elected in 20 days from now, they should behave like a certain Portuguese coach called Jose Mourinho. You know what he does when he plays a team? He packs the boss. He packs the defense line in such a way that you can't penetrate his defense. And when he gets a goal against you, you're in trouble. So once they get in, they can still take more people in the Supreme Court. Pack the Supreme Court.
And then what happens to the next... No, they don't even need to wait for vacancies. Yeah, because it's not sacrosanct that there need to be 9. But what happens when the next president who's Republican comes along and impacts it? This is the problem with
but they started it already now.
So this is the issue, and this is why what President Trump has done could have created a really dangerous precedent, and how he, as an individual, has severely tested every single institution of that over 200-year-old democracy. This is the problem. Some things are supposed to be sacrosanct. And if the Democrats decide to pack the Supreme Court, well, there goes SCOTUS.
So we'll start. The Democrats will pack the Supreme Court. So any Republican
Biden has said he's not a fan of packing the boss in the Supreme Court.
Well, we can talk like this because America is beginning to look like a country in Africa.
Oh, yes. So it's doing it.
We will encourage them to adopt African tactics.
So they have a lot to learn from our Senate. We don't politicize the nomination of our Supreme Court judges.
Because we're not politically aware enough. We are not politically aware enough.
And we don't think in terms of partisanship. Supreme Court justices don't necessarily vote along party lines unless we're talking about election petitions. At that point, it all gets very partisan.
Very interesting. And I'm sure with some election petition cases, a lot of people too want to take a second look at Supreme Court judges too in Nigeria.
Because that's really why they're there.
Because that's why they're there.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to go back to the front page of this day.
Yes, but just before we go to the front of this day, there is a story, the Washington Post, which is quite also interesting. Turnout for early voting is immense. The Washington Post, if you can get that paper there. Yes, turnout for early voting is immense. As we speak, about 15 million Americans already cast their votes. there is the projection that by November 3, majority of Americans will have cast their vote.
Because
yes, and this is an extraordinary level of participation never seen in the U.S. In recent memory.
In fact, there was a barometer county called the Harris County in Georgia that had 97% voter registration rate. So that's to show you that it's all or nothing.
Yes, and more Democrats, the enthusiasm seems to be high among Democrats.
And a lot of people, too, that voted for Trump in the last election, they're beginning to convert, too. But let's see. You know, because I learned something from the last election about Trump. Trump had something called the silent majority, the majority that was for Trump that were not speaking and they showed up in the election. So let's see if Trump is going to get that silent majority, because now he has discountenanced the polls. He said the polls that show that Biden is leading 10%, it's not true. That my people will come through for me. They will come through and vote bigly for me.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. They just lie.
Yeah. Ruben will come back to the front page of this day. Protesters Adamant reject SWAT, insist on holistic police reform. With the Police Act amended, which was signed into law, now being annulled, as it were, by the appeal courts, is also a setback for police reform. How do we proceed hereafter? But some lawyers have said police reform is not something you do by legislation. How do we go about it? I think that should be some of the key questions the government has to think very fast about, and let's see action, concrete steps being taken right now.
Well, if any, we don't seem to have much more time to deal with the various issues, but I think it's interesting and welcome development that the Independent Broadcasting Association of Nigeria has spoken up in defense of the brutalization of Arise News reporters, cameramen. In a statement issued by Guy Mure Bruce, the chairman of that body, he has said very clearly that this assault on press freedom is unacceptable, to the extent that it is also unconstitutional, to the extent that it is also further a violation of the rights of those reporters who are doing their normal job. And I hope that the appropriate authorities will listen to this, because if we as stakeholders on this side within the media, if we do not speak up, if we do not protest, they will think that perhaps we're beginning to get used to what looks like an emerging pattern of government repression.